They don't know what merit is because they get paid whether they succeed or not.
For Snow White, it's coming to terms with finding herself and finding her inner voice and finding a sense of agency so that she can be a just ruler and a wonderful queen, because there's another one in town who's...
Disney's iconic Snow White remake is in freefall, and word on the street is the studio wants its money back from stars Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot. How did this beloved fairy tale spin into a disastrous PR storm, alienating fans, and sinking at the box office? Let's dive in.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird. We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie, Andrew Burnap.
The original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is a beloved piece of Disney history. Released way back in 1937, it was the first full-length animated feature in the United States. And it set the template for countless fairy tales on the big screen. Naturally, when Disney announced a live-action remake, fans expected a respectful homage, something that would preserve the charm of the original, while maybe updating a few elements to appeal to modern audiences. But from the start, there were rumors swirling around the project's direction.
Dude, all of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's how...
And you wonder why people are turning from this stuff in droves, right? Like that the original prince was stalking her. I don't even really remember what Snow White was about either.
Almost immediately, some viewers noticed something off in the promotional materials. Rachel Zegler, an actress lauded for her breakout role in West Side Story, was cast as Snow White. Gal Gadot, best known for Wonder Woman, would star as the evil queen initially. Everyone thought this was a powerhouse pairing Zegler's rising star plus Gadot's established fame. But as more details emerged, people started to worry that the film was diverging too much from the classic story. There were rumors about major changes to Snow White's character, the dwarfs being replaced or altered, and even the prince's role being minimized or cut. These concerns, at first, were shrugged off by Disney. They've modernized classics before, right?
It was a wholesome family film, and now they've turned it into woke trash. Check this out from Wokeness. Disney's Snow White said that harm should befall Trump and his voters. Do not see this film.
The real trouble began when Rachel Zegler started giving interviews and sharing her thoughts on the original Snow White. She criticized the 1937 film's approach to romance, calling it outdated and even weird for featuring a prince who, in her interpretation, was basically stalking Snow White. Some fans understood she was just voicing a contemporary perspective on a very old fairy tale. Others felt she was belittling the core story that millions have cherished for generations. The tone in her statements, some found it a bit too dismissive, almost mocking, of a film many consider iconic.
No peace. So she's basically a violent, hysterical lunatic who wants to kill babies. She's very concerned that her daughter will have to give birth to a child, which generally grandmothers think is a fantastic thing for their daughters. I don't think Trump is doing any forced impregnations.
And then she feeds her a poisoned apple, which is exactly what the harpy ideologues are doing to young women to destabilize their identity and to push them off the reproductive track.
Then, social media came into play. Zegler made repeated remarks that certain aspects of the original story were problematic and backwards. This might not have been such a big deal on its own. Plenty of actors and creative types share critical opinions about older works. But the problem was the sheer intensity of her statements. She seemed to be doubling down on how unrelatable she found the classic Snow White. Fans who grew up loving the original's innocence, charm, and timeless appeal felt alienated.
They've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years now, and how they had her tweet out like a little, "Yay, Snow White, can't wait, so excited, I love to play her."
Why are the worst people constantly empowered in our society? It is going away, but it doesn't go away overnight.
Shortly thereafter, rumors emerged that the negative reception to Zegler's commentary was driving more and more people to side against the remake entirely. In an era when brand loyalty is often tied to nostalgia, those remarks seemed to do real damage. Suddenly, social media threads, comment sections, and fan forums were ablaze with calls to boycott the movie, or at least approach it with significant skepticism. You might wonder where Gal Gadot fits into this. She's a global star, known for her role as Wonder Woman and widely admired for her presence both on and off screen. Many fans thought she would be the calm, steady anchor of this production. However, whispers began that she and Rachel Zegler clashed. Perhaps their worldviews and personalities simply didn't mesh. Some claim the issues started on set, while others say the real conflict began once filming wrapped. The truth might be somewhere in the middle. Complicating matters is the political dimension. Gadot, being Israeli and having served in the IDF, has faced controversies in the past regarding her stance on Middle Eastern politics. although her role in Snow White is that of a villain, the evil queen. Fans who support her as an actress didn't expect her to get caught in crossfire about the film's perceived wokeness, yet here we are, with allegations that both Gadot and Zegler contributed to negative press that overshadowed the movie. Gadot received her own share of heat, including threats or criticisms tied to her background. It became a situation where both lead actresses, ironically, found themselves enveloped in controversy, one for direct statements about the film, the other for more political or personal reasons. So, was it just a vocal minority on social media? Actually, no. The controversy spread to mainstream media outlets, cable news programs, and daytime talk shows. Suddenly, people who never usually pay attention to Hollywood behind-the-scenes gossip were hearing about how Disney was risking tarnishing one of its most classic IPs. The question on many fans' minds, why fix what wasn't broken? Could Disney have made small updates to Snow White without discarding what made the original such an enduring story? Disney, for its part, tried to spin the negativity. They teased modern themes like female empowerment, more depth to Snow White's character, and a storyline less reliant on a prince swooping in to save the day. If done carefully, those elements might have worked. But the repeated comments from Zegler and rumors of behind-the-scenes tension turned the conversation away from a respectful update to a polarizing remake that disrespects the source material. By the time official marketing truly kicked off, many fans had already made up their minds. They either hated the direction or were at least suspicious of it. Industry insiders began warning that Snow White was not tracking well ahead of its release. The production budget was reportedly massive, bloated by CGI, elaborate sets, and a global marketing campaign. Early box office projections were tepid. Then the film released, and the numbers spoke for themselves. Audiences stayed away in droves. The movie's performance was so underwhelming that analysts started labeling it a disaster. Almost immediately, to put it in perspective, Disney invests hundreds of millions of dollars into these live-action remakes with the expectation of hitting at least $500 million in global returns, often more. For Snow White, they likely anticipated a worldwide sensation. Instead, they got a tepid box office run that didn't just fail to meet lofty expectations. It shattered the perception that a well-known IP is automatically a surefire moneymaker.
But like maybe not, maybe just take the tweet down. And she wouldn't. And then they had to hire a special media consultant for her to follow her around all the time and make sure she didn't continue shitting on Snow White.
According to reports, Gal and Rachel got along during filming. It's afterwards that things took a turn.
When a major studio sees a film sink tens of millions or potentially more below break even, panic ensues. Heads of marketing, producers, and even the CEO can be forced to answer to shareholders, who wonder how such a fiasco could happen with a supposedly foolproof property. This is the environment in which rumors of Disney's legal actions started to bubble up.
And she did it and got like millions of views, and they were like, good job, Rachel. And then she, like minutes later, followed it up with, and never forget, free Palestine. This is just like a few months after 10/7.
And I guess people followed suit. There are empty theaters all around the country. We are now at a 1 out of 10 on IMDb for the new Snow White. And it couldn't happen to a better person. What is the lesson to be learned here?
Here's where the story takes an almost surreal turn. Multiple rumors and speculative reports began circulating, claiming that Disney was so dissatisfied with Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot's off-screen conduct and the negative PR that resulted that the studio might be looking to recover some of the wages paid to them. Imagine a scenario where the brand that hired you for a multi-million-dollar contract decides your public statements and behavior contributed to the movie's failure, and thus wants its money back. Is this normal? Definitely not. Hollywood is no stranger to lawsuits and contract disputes. But for a major studio to sue or threaten to sue its own leading actors, citing damage to a film's brand is nearly unheard of. Typically, studios chalk up a failed movie to creative misfires, market conditions, or lack of audience interest. Blaming the actors so directly is extraordinary. What's even more remarkable is how other studios reportedly reacted if an actor becomes too controversial. Major production houses may feel they can't trust that individual to stay on message, and so the rumor mill churned. Paramount and Legendary Pictures, among others, had considered Rachel Zegler for upcoming projects. But once the Snow White fiasco and the negative media cycle kicked into high gear, they supposedly backed off. Contracts or verbal agreements that might have been on the table were suddenly retracted. For Zegler, this was a stark reversal of fortune. A year or two ago, she was hailed as the next big thing, a breakout star with a bright future. Now, it's alleged that her public controversies and friction with co-stars have made major studios label her as a liability. This is not to say she can't bounce back. Hollywood has been known to forgive and forget, especially if an actor can prove their star power in a new project. But in the short term, it's a cautionary tale of how quickly an up-and-coming talent can burn bridges, especially when a high-profile film has at stake. Gal Gadot, on the other hand, is more established. She has Wonder Woman under her belt and other franchises that could keep her afloat. Still, she isn't entirely unscathed. The controversies have somewhat dimmed her usual polished image. Although she isn't primarily blamed for Snow White's implosion, the swirl of negativity around the film inevitably touches everyone involved. Fans are torn. Some are offended by what they see as unnecessary or disrespectful changes to the classic fairy tale. They point out that there's nothing wrong with modernizing a character's agency or motivations. A has done that successfully before, but to come out and publicly disparage the original story, which holds immense nostalgic value, can feel like a slap in the face.
Yeah, we had more dwarfs than we did viewers in most of these theaters. And as you know, there were no dwarfs other than some CGI weird generated version of them. It's the old, it truly is go woke, go broke.
For many, it was never about refusing to see a more empowered Snow White. It was about the tone of the commentary, which seemed to mock or demean the original. Fans also felt that if Disney wanted to reimagine the story so radically, they should have been more transparent or at least more tactful in how they discussed those changes. The million-dollar question, or perhaps the multi-million-dollar question, is whether all this could have been averted. Imagine a scenario where Zegler, Gadot, and Disney marketing teams had united behind a single narrative, that this remake would honor the original spirit while introducing fresh nuances. For a modern audience, if the principal cast had shown consistent respect for the 1937 film, praising its historical importance, while highlighting how new elements would expand on beloved themes, maybe fans would have been more receptive. Instead, each new interview seemed to fuel more outrage, conflicting statements about the prince's role, dismissive remarks about the original's themes, and personal or political spats overshadowed any excitement for a classic revival. By the time of the theatrical release, the negative press had taken on a life of its own, overshadowing any positive word of mouth that might have existed. The Snow White controversy is more than just a gossip piece. It's a cautionary tale with potential ripple effects throughout the industry. After this failure, Disney and likely other studios may become more risk-averse with their remakes of classic properties. They might impose tighter guidelines on how actors talk about these legacy stories in public. Talent could be vetted more thoroughly, not just for their acting chops, but for how well they fit into a brand's image without creating PR headaches. Moreover, the notion of a lawsuit to recover wages, true or not, could show creative freedom. Actors might become reluctant to express any personal opinions that deviate from the studio line, fearing contract clauses could be enforced if a film fails. This might benefit the studio's bottom line, but at what cost to open discourse? Rachel Zegler, for one, might pivot towards smaller, independent films where controversies often matter less, and where raw talent can overshadow negative press. If she can deliver a standout performance in a well-received indie project, the media narrative might change. Hollywood loves a comeback story, after all, but the road ahead looks steep. Given the fiasco's magnitude, she has become a highly polarized figure in a very short span of time. Gal Gadot has a more substantial body of work to lean on. Her portrayal of Wonder Woman and other roles have earned her strong name recognition. Still, she'll likely tread carefully in future interviews, ensuring she doesn't fan any flames or reignite the discourse about her personal views. She may hope that the blame for Snow White remains more centered on the film's overall direction and marketing fiasco rather than on her. That said, her association with this project is, at least in the short term, a blemish on her filmography. So, what can we learn from this Snow White disaster? First, nostalgia is a powerful force. If you're going to remake a beloved classic, you have to respect its core while making updates. Trashing the original story in interviews or coming off as dismissive can alienate the very people who might have supported a fresh take. Second, unity matters. When the lead actors and the studio send conflicting signals, it confuses audiences. Are we celebrating the original, or are we tearing it down? That confusion can be lethal at the box office. Third, star power doesn't automatically guarantee success anymore. In our social media age, a misstep can spiral into viral backlash that overshadows any marketing campaign. Lastly, the potential legal action underscores just how high the stakes are. Disney spent hundreds of millions on this production and expected a box office juggernaut.